The Manhattan skyline glittered, a frozen constellation of diamonds against the velvet night. From the silent height of her penthouse, Norma Williams watched her own reflection superimpose itself upon the city. Her face, a study in composed elegance, betrayed none of the quiet unease she felt. Tomorrow was Christmas, and everything had to be perfect. "Norma, I've hidden Emily's present in the closet," David called from the living room, his voice a familiar anchor. "Thank you," she said, turning from the window with a practiced smile. "Is Emily asleep?" David looked up from his tablet, his face softened by the warm light. "Yes, she can hardly wait for tomorrow. Did you tell her Carol and the others are coming?" A shadow, subtle and swift, passed behind Norma's eyes. She picked up a wine glass, the crystal cool against her skin. "Yes, she's looking forward to seeing Jason." It was a half-truth. Her 14-year-old daughter possessed a quiet intuition, and Emily had sensed the undercurrents beneath Aunt Carol's polished charm long ago. The sisters' relationship was a delicate tapestry woven with threads of obligation and resentment. Norma's financial support, saving their home, paying for Jason's school, was a kindness that Carol wore like a leaden cloak, her gratitude a thin veneer over a deep-seated envy. "Your mother left a message," David added gently. "She'll be here at 10. Norma's smile was automatic. "Her room is ready." Barbara, their mother, was another piece of this complex puzzle. She wore her elegance like armor and secretly admired Carol's calculated nature, forever dismissing Norma's generosity as a form of weakness. "Mother still favors Carol, doesn't she?" Norma sighed, sinking onto the sofa. David's arm was a steady comfort around her shoulders. "You've done everything right. Don't let it get to you." "It's not just that," she murmured. "Last week, when Carol and I were shopping, her questions about my work, the house, they were so specific. It felt like she was gathering intelligence." David frowned. "Are you sure it wasn't just conversation?" "I hope so," Norma whispered, letting the sentence hang in the air. To give voice to her fears was to risk making them real. But the signs were there, the coldness behind Carol's smile, the loaded glances she shared with their mother, the unnatural way Carol looked at Emily. The clock struck 11, its chime a solemn note in the hushed room. Outside, the first snowflakes began to fall, a silent promise of a white Christmas. Norma took a deep breath. Tomorrow would be wonderful, she told herself, a mantra against the chill seeping into her heart. Christmas morning dawned, the city muffled and pristine under a blanket of fresh snow. By 9 a.m., the penthouse was filled with the rich scent of coffee and the low hum of anticipation. The living room, dominated by a towering tree, was a stage set for familial joy. The doorbell rang precisely on time. Barbara entered first, a vision of chilly elegance. Carol, Michael, and Jason followed in a wave of cheerful greetings that didn't quite reach their eyes. Carol's hug was a brief, perfunctory press. "Merry Christmas," she said, her voice sweet as syrup, her gaze as warm as ice. "Merry Christmas," Barbara echoed, turning to Emily. "Grandma's gift for you is special. Look forward to opening it later." As she spoke, Norma didn't miss the knowing glance that flashed between her mother and sister. The gift exchange began, a ritual of bright paper and forced cheer. Jason whooped with delight at the latest iPhone from Norma and David. Michael stammered his thanks, looking uncomfortable, while Carol's were clipped and hollow. Then, Emily reached for a small, exquisitely wrapped box from Carol and Barbara. "It's so pretty," she said, her face alight with excitement. "Wait a minute," David said suddenly, his voice tight. "Where did you get that box?" Carol feigned surprise. "A department store." "Why?" "No reason," David said, though his eyes remained fixed on the gift. A cold dread tightened in Norma's chest, but she forced a smile. "Go on, Emily." The room grew still. Carol and Barbara leaned forward, their attention a palpable, hungry thing. The air grew thick, charged with a tension that had nothing to do with holiday excitement. With careful fingers, Emily untied the ribbon and peeled back the gold paper. Inside was a small jewelry box. "Oh, it's lovely," she breathed. "Open it," Carol urged, a strange, sharp smile playing on her lips. Emily lifted the lid. Nestled inside was a delicate silver bracelet, its tiny charms catching the light. "It's beautiful, thank you," she exclaimed, reaching to lift it out. The moment her fingers touched the silver, her expression shattered. Her eyes flew wide, the pupils dilating into black pools. A tremor started in her hands, then seized her entire body in a violent, uncontrollable spasm. A choked gasp escaped her lips as she crumpled to the floor. Emily! Norma's scream tore through the room. She dropped to her knees, cradling her daughter's head as Emily's body jerked and stiffened, foam flecking her blue-tinged lips. Ambulance! David was shouting into his phone, his voice raw with panic. My daughter is seizing. Please, hurry. Tears blurred Norma's vision as she held on, her world narrowing to the terrifying convulsions racking her child's small frame. Then, cutting through the chaos, she heard her mother's voice. Was the stimulus too strong? Barbara murmured. The words were laced with a hint of laughter. Norma's head snapped up. Barbara's hand was covering her mouth, but her eyes were gleaming with a cold, detached light. Beside her, Carol looked down at the scene, her expression one of profound satisfaction. The perfect surprise, isn't it? She said softly. The words were an ice pick through Norma's heart. She stared, disbelief freezing her in place. This was no accident, it was an execution. What have you done? Norma screamed, her voice breaking. Emily is. But her words were lost as Emily's convulsions grew more violent, her small body a battleground, and the gray pallor of death began to steal over her face. The world had shrunk to the convulsing form of her daughter on the floor. David, cushions. Norma's voice was a raw, trembling command. In her periphery, she saw Barbara and Carol standing apart, their heads bent together in a hushed conference. But her entire being was focused on Emily, on keeping her still, on keeping her alive. The ambulance is coming, David said, his hand on her shoulder shaking as badly as her own. It's going to be okay. But his eyes were wide with a terror that mirrored hers. Emily's breathing was a shallow, irregular rasp. Norma's gaze fell on the bracelet, lying innocently on the rug, an ordinary silver trinket. Why had it triggered this? Let me see that, David said suddenly, his voice grim. He carefully pried it from Emily's limp fingers. His face paled as he turned it over. There's something. The doorbell chimed, a jarringly normal sound. And then the room was filled with the efficient chaos of paramedics. They had Emily on a stretcher in moments. Please, save her, Norma begged, her tears falling onto her daughter's ashen face. Ma'am, you can ride with us, one medic said. We need to go, now. David was already moving. Michael, the keys are on the table. Lock up. Michael's nod was stiff with shock. As Norma was ushered toward the ambulance, she cast one last look back. Carol and Barbara stood at the large window, watching, their expressions, devoid of panic, filled instead with a cold, calculating observation, sent a glacial shard through her heart. It was the look of architects surveying a finished project. The ambulance doors slammed shut, sealing them in a cocoon of sirens and despair. One horrific question crystallized in Norma's mind: accident or design? She buried the thought, clinging to Emily's cold hand. Nothing else mattered now. The emergency room at Manhattan General was a surreal contrast of holiday decorations and clinical urgency. While Emily was whisked away, Norma and David were left in the purgatory of a plastic-walled waiting area, their clasped hands a solitary anchor. She's strong, David whispered, a mantra without conviction. The bracelet, Norma murmured. What did you see? David exhaled sharply. A small, embedded component. Like a microchip. I gave it to the doctor. Norma's blood ran cold. A device? You can't mean? Footsteps echoed. Carol and Barbara arrived. A study in contrasts. Michael trailed them, his face etched with genuine worry, while Carol and Barbara's composure was a mask of eerie calm. Any news? Michael asked. They're with her, David said, his voice dangerously level. Carol moved to sit beside Norma. But David stepped between them. Don't. David, we're family, Carol protested, her eyes wide with feigned injury. Are you? Norma rose, her voice trembling with a fury that burned away the tears. When my daughter was dying on the floor, you were smirking. That's a lie. Carol's voice scaled higher. I was in shock. The treatment room door opened, cutting through the tension. The doctor's face was grave. Mr. and Mrs. Williams. Our daughter, Norma choked. She's stable. We've controlled the seizure with medication. It was epileptic in nature. But she has no history of epilepsy, David insisted. Which is why we're investigating a trigger. We're also analyzing the bracelet you provided. The doctor's gaze shifted to Barbara. And you are? Her grandmother, Barbara said, her posture rigid. For the first time, a crack of agitation showed in her eyes. The doctor's nod was curt. Given the circumstances, it's a necessary precaution. Hours later, the doctor returned to Emily's bedside, a tablet in hand. The news was worse than they feared. The CT scan shows no structural abnormalities. This seizure was induced. He paused, his jaw tight. The technician found a miniaturized low-frequency generator embedded in the bracelet. It was designed to emit specific electromagnetic pulses known to trigger neural disruption. The air was sucked from the room. Norma felt the world tilt. Are you saying, David said, each word a hammer blow, that someone built a weapon to hurt our daughter? The design is precise and malicious. It was no accident. The doctor's gaze was full of a professional pity that was more terrifying than any diagnosis. I've alerted the police. This is a criminal matter. As he left, a heavy silence descended, broken only by the hum of hospital equipment. The truth was a physical weight, crushing and absolute. David's hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. I'll kill them. David. No. Norma's grip on his arm was the only thing holding her upright. We need the truth. A faint rustle came from the bed. Emily's eyelids fluttered open, seeing her daughter's confused, weary gaze. Norma's heart shattered and reforged itself into something harder. The family she had loved and supported had tried to destroy her own. The trust was ash. In a sterile hospital conference room, Detective Morris closed her notebook. They've confessed, she said quietly. Barbara broke first. Carol held out longer, but the evidence was undeniable. Why? The question was a ragged whisper from Norma. According to Carol, it was years of resentment, your success, your generosity. It festered into a pathological hatred. She saw this as poetic justice. Poetic justice? David spat the words. In her twisted logic, your help was a constant reminder of her own failings. Hurting Emily was the surest way to hurt you. And my mother? She was complicit. She knew of the plan and did nothing to stop it. In fact, she encouraged it. The final piece of the nightmare fell into place. 3 days later, Emily came home. The doctors promised no permanent physical damage, but the invisible wounds ran deep. A year passed, the seasons turning with a quiet solemnity. On a winter afternoon, Norma stood at the window, watching snow blanket the city. What are you thinking? David asked, coming to stand beside her. About family, she murmured. The ones we're given, and the ones we choose. Carol was serving a 7-year sentence. Barbara, deemed fully culpable after psychiatric evaluation, was in a secure facility. Michael, horrified and betrayed, had divorced Carol and taken Jason to start anew in Chicago. How is she? Norma asked, though she knew. Better. David smiled softly. Therapy is helping. She's at the movies with friends today. A figure appeared down the street. A young woman trudging through the snow with a suitcase. Sarah, David's niece, orphaned and alone. They had opened their home, and their hearts, to her. I've learned that blood is a circumstance, Norma said, her voice firm with hard-won conviction. But love is a choice. Family is built on trust, on showing up, on not looking away when someone is falling. David squeezed her hand. The scars remained, a permanent ache, but they were no longer bleeding. The Christmas tree in their living room cast a warm, golden glow, a beacon against the descending twilight. Norma turned from the window and walked toward the door, ready to welcome their new beginning, their chosen family, home.